Okay, Thomas, welcome to Rising Giants. Thanks for coming on the show. Wanted to start things off by just talking about your early years, kind of how you got to where you are today. So, if you could talk a little bit about some of your early career and
Mhm.
before you ended up coming to Cambodia.
Yeah. Thank you, Max, and Dom, for having me today, first of all. Yeah, how do I come to Cambodia? I mean, as most people, I think, who live here, was just at some point fell in love with it and try to stay here, try to make a living. And I'm happily saying that I got lucky enough to make it work. But how did I get here? So I'm grew up in Germany with my parents and one brother. Um, Always had an interest, a curiosity for something else, like to see the world. I always want to go out there. So I always actually I wasn't stupid, but I was quite bad in school. Always being the teachers like to say I was a clown. Um, so my grades weren't always great. I had really good math grades, and I mean I still ended up in finance. That makes sense. But like for example, my English and French classes had really bad grades. And then one day, I think I was 15, I went to my parents and said, asked them if I would pay for Chinese lessons. And they were like, "What the hell? You don't even manage to learn English and French." But whatever. So they paid me some Chinese lessons. Started to learn Chinese, and when I was 18, when I got my diploma, we had the diploma handover, basically the prom. In Germany, we don't call it prom, but basically the same thing. And the next day, literally, I was sitting on a plane to Shanghai, and where I attended language school. Um, from then on, so I went to Shanghai for 3 months, learned Chinese, which was like eye opening to me in the first place. So I was 18, just finished high school, never been outside Europe, and I touched down in Shanghai at the airport. Chinese driver from the school was picking me up. Didn't speak a single word in English, and then got into the van, and like literally for one hour, you just drive on this elevated highway 20 meters up from the actual roads down, going into the city of Shanghai, and just skyscrapers left and right. And this was an eye-opening moment for me in terms of like the world is huge out there, and actually like you yourself are so small as well, and there's so much to see and experience. So yeah, say 3 months there, then went back to Europe, where I started going to university. I studied mostly international business, later specialization in finance in Maastricht, so in the Netherlands. If you A lot of people probably won't know, Maastricht is actually the country where the Maastricht treaties, which actually founded Europe. So Maastricht is it's an important city for European history, right in the center of Europe. So that's where I studied. Did a semester in Singapore, did another study program in China, and every summer break I tried to travel around. So I did a lot in the Middle East, like Jordan, Israel, Morocco. Did a lot of hiking. So I always was an outdoorsy guy as well. So often I went backpacking in Morocco by myself. Did Mount Toubkal, always solo, and did the same then in Asia, and traveled through all of Southeast Asia. Spent a lot of time in Indonesia. Did all the volcanoes there, but along that path, eventually came by Cambodia as well, and like typical backpacker thing, 2 days in Phnom Penh, and like 5-6 days in Siem Reap, seeing the temples, and the genuity of the people, which was really standing out compared to a lot of other countries. People were super nice. That was like in the West, it's always the big holiday countries, obviously Thailand, and people tell this is the country of smile. But compared to that, really Cambodia is the true country of smile, actually a genuine smile, and it's not about there's no hassling about prices. People are genuinely friendly, want to share their culture with you, and say hello left and right, and kids screaming friendly on the street when you walk by and stuff. So that, besides obviously the weather and the nature, the usual stuff we just don't have. Me for in Germany, or I think you both guys are English, so we don't have that in Germany or in Europe, right? So having 30 degrees all year round is also a plus. So yeah, I fell in love with Cambodia and went back studying, and I always knew like I want to go to Asia. I want to see the world, want to work outside in the developing countries as well, and a little bit adventure. But also, like, I can't go here without finishing my school. It's like, what do I gonna do? I don't want to teach English for the next 30 years. So I always I pushed myself, went back and actually finished my master in finance. And I finished that when I was 23, and that's basically when I went full time, left Europe. Yeah, that's how I got here in a nutshell.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we definitely agree that Cambodia has this very genuine positivity
Mm.
about the people here. So that's really nice to hear as well. What would you say some of the big um, perceptions people have of Cambodia that are outdated at this point, and that
Yeah.
when you explain to your friends back home or about what it's like living in Cambodia, what are they? Yeah, what are they kind of misunderstanding?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most widespread disbeliefs is just like it's a third world country, which means it's poor, it's dangerous, it's dirty. Um, I mean, it's not a rich, developed country. It's definitely not, but it's not dangerous at all. I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions about Cambodia. Honestly, I would be more scared in Europe, and I know a lot of my American friends, English friends, French friends, they all feel the same. It's more dangerous to walk around at night in Paris or in Boston or also in Germany, in Berlin, where I'm from, also. Cambodia is extremely safe. Um, the city itself is mostly very clean. There are some things, single use plastics definitely is an issue, but it's not as dirty as some other developing countries in Africa or so. So, yeah, and again the genuine people, it's just people think that in a developing country, dangerous, everybody might want to scam you, everybody wants your money, you couldn't have a genuine relationship with the other gender or with any person, build a friendship or something. And I think this is a big misconception that every country, doesn't matter the economic status, has the ups and downs, the different kind of people, has poor people, has rich people. And I mean, the average might be different, but I think in like for all the countries I've seen in the world, where it always comes down to the same ingredients, and they like people are the same everywhere, and you got rich and poor people everywhere. Everybody just tries to protect the family, and you can make friends everywhere. So I think that's a bit misconception about Cambodia and developing countries in general. Yeah.
Okay, and what was it like your first few years working in Cambodia? We noticed that you spent some time teaching at universities. What was that
Yes.
experience like, and what did you learn from like the youth of Cambodia and yeah,
Yeah.
the next wave of innovators?
Um, I mean, I think throughout my career in Cambodia, the big adjustment is always cultural. So when I started teaching, it works differently here than in Europe. So I also taught in back in my university in Maastricht quite a bit. So tutoring courses in accounting and finance, and same what I did here was business, banking, and accounting. Um, like you really like Cambodians are extremely hierarchical. So they want the teacher to speak, and they want to absorb the knowledge the teacher is presenting. This means that they barely ask questions, and sometimes there is a lack of criticism, but it also means that they are very curious in terms of the teacher has to really give them the knowledge and present full on. So, which means which reflects that like you really in Cambodia you really have to outline your lessons, you really have to plan ahead and really have the content ready, which you're gonna transfer to the students. While in Europe you could just go into a classroom and have a little case study and then start a more interactive session. So that's yeah, that was one of my main differences for me seeing here teaching. But yeah, my teaching stint, to be fair, was only I think 6 months.
Mm. And
Yeah.
what was it that you were teaching?
Accounting and banking.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that's definitely becoming a more popular career choice for
Yes,
Cambodians.
yes. I mean, I think from all the universities in Cambodia and like the also international accreditations, the number one thing currently for Cambodians, I think, is accounting. So you can study an internationally recognized ACCA. By now you have a CFA institute, Chartered Financial Analyst. Yes, and one big other thing is legal. So you have Royal University of Law and Economics. Um, yeah, so I mean, this is exactly my field as well. Unfortunately, for the country where we hope that they diversify a bit more, so there should be a bit more. I know, like the last few years, we're definitely putting a lot more effort into digitalization. So there's now a lot more coding schools. Just recently, Hunmanet went to France and they signed an MOU on building a coding school for Cambodians.
Sweet. Yeah.
Um, so I hope eventually there might be also more of engineering, for example, electronics, stuff like this. But yeah.
Is there any like area of study that you think if you could really push on that would have a big impact? Would it be something like sort of the more mechanical side of engineering, not the software?
Yeah, I think it's both. Um, I mean, it's like Cambodia has become such an incubator for technology, right? So that like the digitization and leapfrogging. I mean, I don't really like that word's been used too often, but Cambodia really is like has so many still undeveloped areas in the economy, which they now can gap thanks to technology. Be it in banking, being in food deliveries, being in deliveries in general, in social media, anything. So they immediately go to the digitization way, right? So I think it's extremely important to have this software finite youth and having those coders and teaching coding. But in the long term, for a really diversified economy, a real economy, and we had Ford setting up an assembly line, I think around Passat. We have Toyota currently building a plant in the special economic zone. And I mean, those are great developments. And for Cambodia to go down that route, to become more diversified and really also build things instead, not just agricultural goods, but actually build something. And so currently it's all agriculture and garments, but to actually build stuff, I think it would be good to the next step after digitalization will also add engineering, mechanical engineering, construction, things like this.
Yeah, and taking a look at the timeline too. So during the time that you were lecturing at these business schools too, that's when you were also working at the as the head of research for the Association of Banks in Cambodia, or the ABC. What was it like working there, and how did you feel like your learnings were able to translate as well to the lecturing part of your career as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I did both for just a short time. I said maybe a couple months, but I actually did both at the same time. But I ended up being with ABC for 5 years. So for 5 years, I worked for the banks, representing the bank's interest to the National Bank of Cambodia and other authorities. Um, I think the biggest lesson I personally had, which still allows me to actually operate and be in Cambodia, is to understand the culture and to adjust my own attitude and behavior. Because as a German, I was raised also by my dad is an engineer, by very straightforward people. Not never putting a hand for the mouth, and like really talking straight and being honest and being critical. Um, so that is something I had to adjust a little bit in terms of you here that hierarchy plays a much more important role here in Cambodia, and so I had to culturally adjust to learn that where's my place to talk and when can I talk and who should I talk to, and that sometimes forums are not always there just to exchange, but just to present what was already decided to say that. But yeah, so the cultural adjustment I think was the biggest learning curve for me, and I think this took me probably 2 years to actually understand the culture and a lot of the etiquette, also in terms of also along that way improving on my Khmer. Just having the little etiquettes like Chumipsur and Idodom, Lukningsday, Ognia, etc., so that you just can greet people in their local language and show them the appropriate respect. And I think this cultural learning curve was the most important thing, which helped me to be where I am now as well. Yeah.
When you're during that time as you were learning the language, um, what was your general feeling of that confidence level in speaking in a business setting? Like, was there a time where you felt like it was just a light switch and you were able to it just everything just kind of flowed, or was it one of those was it just progressively you were able to gain more confidence and be able to essentially speak in those settings in Khmer?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely some form of progression. I mean, I'm still far away from being totally fluent, especially in a business setting. So, I mean, even every Khmer can tell you that Cambodia is a very difficult language, and if like even your average Cambodian will not be able to talk law if he hasn't studied law. And this goes for a lot of technical sectors. They have a very specific vocabulary for each sector, and especially for those formal sectors. So yeah, sadly, I'm working on it, but my Khmer is not at like I said, I have a master in finance, but I could not write the same exam in Khmer. There's absolutely no way. But yeah, there definitely was a progression to having the fluency and the feeling confident enough, having the confidence to just launch a certain speech or to a conversation with Chomipsu and going through the etiquette in Khmer, and then apologizing why I don't speak enough Khmer to keep the conversation going in Khmer. Which yeah, definitely eventually became more natural, and that helped a lot to open up with the Khmers as well and with the local culture. So yeah.
Fantastic. And so during the time that you were working at ABC, it was right at the end of 2017 through to 2022. And of course during that time there was COVID and a lot of changes within the banking sector. If you could touch on maybe just the overall growth and how maybe some of the key changes that you saw during those 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
4 to 5 years,
Yeah.
that you felt like were very much very like basically the biggest like foundation shifters you would say over those 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, the growth has been massive in the financial sector in Cambodia over the last 10 years. So, like pre-COVID, the economy was growing at 7%. Currently, we are around 5.5%, or NBC says we are back to 6.5%. But the banking sector over the last 10, 15 years was growing at 20% each year, to put that into perspective. So basically tripling doubling every 3 years in size. Um, uh, one of the biggest changes I saw was just the number of banks. So since I got here in 2017, people were always saying consolidation should be happening at some point, more banks coming, and that until today hasn't happened. Until today, there's still basically one or two banks joining the market every year. There's still licenses being issued. Um, I think one of the most significant things I was lucky enough to see along and to go through with as well and to work on directly. Biggest shifts was to the promotion of Khmer Real. So in 2017, when I started working at ABC, the real economy was around 10-15% Khmer Real, but in the financial sector, it was only 1%, less than 1% of a bank's portfolios were in Khmer Real. And so, end of 2017, the NBC came out and said all banks need to have 10% of a loan portfolio in Khmer Real. And this was a massive shift. Until then, a lot of the banks, especially a lot of the foreign banks, didn't had ATMs who could disperse Khmer Real. They often didn't even have accounts in Khmer Real, denominated Khmer Real accounts. They were all just 100% US dollar. And now they all had to overnight shift to Khmer Real or adopt Khmer Real and offer Khmer Real to their customers. So that was a dramatic shift and really interesting. How does a country, a dollarized country, transition or try to transition to their own currency without the possibility of hyperinflation which had happened in Vietnam and in Thailand at some point. So not to repeat was the history of like neighboring countries, right? So that was very interesting, and I think the NBC managed that one very well. So we currently, from like less than 1%, we are now at like 12% Khmer Real in the financial sector, and the Khmer Real is still pretty much pegged to the US dollar at 4,000, 4,100. So that was very interesting shift in Cambodia, in the economy, also in the power for the government, because now they can actually take monetary mechanisms to help the economy in times of need, which previously they could not, right? So if you're in a dollarized country, the only ones who are able to print the dollar is the US Fed. So now having 10% of the economy or 12% in Khmer Real, they actually have a little bit of leverage and actually some tools at hand that they can work with. So that's very impressive and very distinctive change and very quite unique in the world, like currently. Yeah.
Just one quick follow up there. A lot of people mention that when describing the peg, most people will say it's they won't say it with 100% certainty that it's pegged. So I'm curious on like your perspective on that. Like how does the pegging actually work in practice?
Yeah. So yeah, it's true. It's not 100% pegged because it's not backed by US dollar, right? But the NBC makes sure that it basically moves alongside the US dollar. So how they do that is especially over the last years, when the economy didn't do so well, the Khmer Real actually lost in value and they're increasing, they're basically inflationary towards the dollar, and the exchange rate increased. So what they do is they take US dollar they have, so from their own reserves, and go on the market and buy Khmer Real. So basically increasing the demand for Khmer Real by taking Khmer Real out of the market, spending their own money, and thereby deflating the Khmer Real. So I think like 6 months ago or 5 months ago, the last time NBC did a move like that was I think that they bought back around $150 million. So yeah, that's what they do in order to keep the Khmer Real stable. They have to go out and spend their own reserves and actually spend money to stabilize the market.
Hmm. Okay. And over the long term, what would you say the goal is on de-dollarization in general?
I mean, what the goal truly is, I can't speak for the government. What I can see, I believe that the government is very smart, that it doesn't make sense to push this too quick. Because when you just enter hyperinflation or you pushing a lot of actors, also like investors out of the market, because I mean like the US dollar definitely is an attraction for Cambodia, right? People come to Cambodia because it's a dollarized economy. They can invest in dollars and they can get their return in US dollars. So it's a currency hedge, right? Or no currency hedge needed, basically. But long term, I definitely think the government wants to increase the amount of Khmer Real in circulation, and that ratio, as said, it's currently around 12% in the financial sector. In the real economy, I believe it's around 20%. So they definitely want to increase that again, because that gives them leverage and more monetary power to actually control things and print their own money. But I think they're gonna do this very gradually. So the NBC and the government, they know very well that like doing this too quick would just cause ripple effects in the economy, which would not be healthy. And like Vietnam has done that, and now you're paying like we have 4,000 real to a dollar, and I don't know the exact number for Vietnam right now, but yeah, you talk millions, right? So that would be absolutely detrimental to Cambodia if that would happen. So I believe like they do want to go from 12% of the financial sector to 20%, but this will probably take another 5 years, maybe 10 even. But yes.
Hmm. Okay. And maybe just segueing to your then transition outside of the Association of Banks and actually going and working with one of the largest groups in the country,
Hmm.
Royal Group. What was that like, that transition, and moving over to like a more of a large corporate setting?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a lot more corporate. That's definitely a keyword. But Yeah, after I spent exactly, it was funny enough, the day I left was the 31st of November, and the day I started at ABC was 1st December. So it was literally on the day 5 years, which I spent at ABC. Basically public sector, right? Working for the private sector, representing the banks, but in a public sector function in terms of representing those banking interests to the government. That's what I did for 5 years. So to some extent, the transition came naturally as like a lot of the Royal Group players were not unknown to me. Like Royal Group is a huge player in the financial sector as well, with owning Wing 100% and owning J Trust to a large share, Royal J Trust. So I already knew a lot of people inside Royal Group, and hence it wasn't stepping into the unknown, really, right? It was a very slow and smooth transmission in that sense. But yeah, a lot more corporate, a lot more less political to some extent. As I said earlier, like one of the biggest learning curves I had was the cultural learning curve, and that also translate to how to behave in terms of politics a little bit, right? And I now had less of it inside the Royal Group, but it's still an asset to know how to deal with etiquette, to know the etiquette. But now in a more corporate world, real private sector, I'm not as much like private public sector involved anymore as before. So yeah, I think like if you mentioned it yourself, the keyword is just it's a lot more corporate now, but instead, like the nice thing to myself, a real thing I really enjoy, and I really laugh at my job at Royal Group now, is that instead of just sitting at the sidelines and watching the opportunities and watching this intense growth of Cambodia and just helping the banks in getting there, I'm now actually have the ability and have a chance to be part of this growth and this opportunities. I mean, we will talk later about RGX and some other projects I'm working on, but like having this ability to actually work on 5 projects at the same time and really being part of that process in the real economy and the real private sector, that's something I never had before, and that's like the absolute beautiful thing about working with a large conglomerate like that in the private sector. Yeah.
Yeah, that brings us to our next topic. Dom and I on Rising Giants is being focused on startups and innovation, fintech and digital assets, crypto, whatever you want to call it, has been a topic that keeps coming up, and I think something where Cambodia, the adoption rates are actually quite high in comparison to other countries. And so be curious to hear more about how RGX came together, the first licensed crypto exchange or digital asset exchange in Cambodia. So yeah, how did that get going for you?
Yeah. So yeah, you pointed out already. I mean, the demand is there, the community is already there. Crypto by nature it's decentralized, right? It's a decentralized technology, and hence has reached every human in the world, basically. I think the last number I saw is that there are like 200 million, around 200 million crypto wallets or digital asset wallets around the world at this point. And like there's not a single country in this world where there wouldn't be one, right? So Cambodia is, as like the numbers we know from Binance, which is the biggest existing platform people use in Cambodia, is that there's around 200,000 Cambodian wallets on Binance, and they use P2P. So the market is already there. So how did RGX come into play was a bit we said like for several years the banking sector actually has been banned by the NBC to deal with any crypto businesses. So until now, nobody actually got any license, or no regulated digital asset market has actually sprung up yet. So this is RGX being the first one, is a new one, and we have worked with a regulator, specifically SCSC, over the last year to come up with a form which is acceptable to the government, which is safe to the Cambodian users, and which will help the country in developing the country and while protecting and being a safe environment for investors. I think one of the key things for RGX is to educate the Cambodians and to help understanding this new realm of digital assets. As this, I mean, in reality, this is also why crypto was banned in the first place in Cambodia, because of the fear that people get scammed and people gamble their money away, and was a completely justifiable arguments in order to ban it. But I mean, the reality is just with that kind of technology, you cannot ban people from actually using it. I mean, while it being banned from the banks, basically, you still have 200,000 people buying and selling crypto every day on Binance. And they do it via their banks, no doubt. I mean, via P2P. Um, the, so the question is now like, if you regulate it, do you put it in a safer space? If you don't regulate it, you give open doors to people scamming people and issuing like totally unvaluable tokens, etc. So that's how we started RGX with the intention to build a platform for Cambodians, which is here, which is regulated, which is safe, and which will help the country developing in terms of digitization, which is one of the prime goals of for government right now. Yeah.
So just touching on the P2P side, which is very popular for the likes of Binance, will you also have that functionality in order for people to kind of on ramp and off ramp? Because currently you can't do direct. You can't, do a direct interaction between a crypto exchange and a bank.
Yes. 100%. So this is also our next plan, is to launch P2P, enabling just the users to trade with each other. Still monitored in terms of from the platform, and everything is going to be monitored by SCSC, and we're still gonna adhere to anti-money laundering laws and KYC, etc. But P2P is the next step we are launching as well, to enable users to actually on-off ramp fiat into the digital asset world.
And just to put it into perspective, so the fact that Binance have 200,000 users in Cambodia, how would that compare to like a bank, for example? Like how many customers does the average bank have in Cambodia?
The average bank would have to do some math now, but I think there's around 2.4 million bank accounts, something like this, right? Right now, I believe, or loan accounts, actually. I think bank accounts there's more. So there's actually 2 million something loan accounts. So you divide that by, I believe, like 60 banks right now. So 40,000 or something like that. So that's your average bank. So
I know there are some countries in Africa where I was looking at some statistics the other day, and there was actually more Binance accounts than the total bank accounts in the country. Which is crazy.
That's not the case here. But I mean, we often like a joke in the tech sector here is often that the total like sign of digitization and the youth of Cambodia being so tech affinite is the number of Facebook accounts, right? So I believe there's 10 million Facebook accounts in Cambodia, and there's only that's like nearly double. I believe, like, so saving accounts in the banking sector, I think it's like 4 or 5 million or